Welcome to Salcedo Paranormal. It is Wednesday, November 16th, 2022, and tonight we'll be talking about comic books and the paranormal. As always, you can find all the episodes of the show along with links to social media and ways to contact me at the podcast page, and that is salcidoparanormal.podbean.com. That's SALSIDO paranormal.podbean.com. Always happy to hear from you all, whether you have comments or questions or topic suggestions or stories of paranormal experiences, whether they're your own or from others you trust. Happy to either read those or have you join me on the show to talk about them. And so tomorrow night will be the last show of the week. That will be more paranormal news, and then we'll get to that'll be the end of this week's shows. So, and then we'll start again on Sunday as usual. Thank you all for being here. I see you all in the stream listening. I really appreciate that. And tonight we'll be covering another comic book event. And so to do that, I want to welcome Derek onto the stream.
Hey, James. Good to be here. Thanks for having me again.
No problem. Thank you for joining me, as always. And that's a neat image there of the one of the covers for Siege. That's a
some cool ones.
Yeah, it's I definitely recommend, as I always say, everyone check out the Discord server, because during these streams, especially these kind of streams, Derek and sometimes others will post images related to the what we're talking about. So but yeah, this is going to be fun. And so what are your initial takes on this whole event before we get into it?
Yeah, so this one is one that you've read. I haven't read this one. I have perused some of the breakdowns. I've listened to some like comic explain videos, so I'm familiar with it. But I'm not. This is one where you're going to be leading. I'm just going to be kind of following your lead. But from what I've heard of it, and the little I've read in the part of the story that's been narrated to me, it's pretty cool. It's like the culmination of kind of the last 3-4 events, kind of the whole age of Marvel Comics that we've been talking about the last few months, the last few non-Halloween videos, kind of all coming to a culmination here. And I guess like in Marvel at this point, it's kind of like leading to sort of a soft reboot with like a new Avengers team, and they call it like a new heroic age. So pretty cool. And I know for us, it's leading to like sort of our big culmination, or like one of our events we've been looking forward to for a while now. So I'm excited to talk about it, and then get to the big one next time,
Yeah,
No
and
spoilers.
that next one is going to be fun. It's probably my favorite event that I've
definitely
read, which is saying a lot because I've read a lot of events. So yeah, but yeah, no, I did enjoy this event, and it was really amazing, especially after the one we covered a little while back, which is Dark Reign.
Yeah.
And I think that even though it was a difficult thing to cover, it was still important.
Yeah, very.
Because without it, you would have no idea the extent of Norman Osborn's role in all of this.
Yeah, exactly. So like, this kind of what like Siege ended up, when I was looking at it, kind of ended up being what I expected Dark Reign to be. But whereas like Dark Reign was like we assumed kind of it was a event like this one, but then looking into it, we find out it's just a whole basically marketing campaign, or a whole like year of Marvel Comics where just everything was Dark Reign. So that was like a little bit daunting. But it kind of just planted the seeds and set up everything for Siege basically. So it was kind of all leading to what we're going to talk about tonight. And yeah, so like Norman Osborn right now is the head of Shield. He's kind of like in charge of all the superheroes. He still has to kind of go through the government, but he's the new Nick Fury right now. And then we have Asgard is over Oklahoma, Shadowed APOC. But that's pretty much what we need to know going into this. Basically, that's pretty much it, right?
I think so. And regarding that, may sound weird to some people that there's this whole world kind of floating above Earth,
Yeah.
But given that it's the Marvel Universe, this is not actually that weird in a way.
Yeah.
There have been stranger things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
So,
the context for that is like, I guess when Tony was doing the whole like post Civil War that we covered and everything was when Tony was going around and trying to like get everybody to register and stuff. The Asgard, like the Asgardians, their planet was like Asgard was destroyed, so they were living in something called New Asgard in Oklahoma. And Tony was like, you can't be in America and not sign these accords. Like you can't like not sign these registration superhero registration acts. And Thor just like wasn't having it apparently. So it was like a compromise. So Tony was like, okay, if you just kind of use this magic, whatever, and float your city, hover your city over the country, then technically you're in the air, and we in America there's no jurisdiction over you, so we can just kind of agree to not get in each other's way, basically. But now I guess Norman Osborn is not loving that whole idea, and he wants to have more control over Asgard, and that's kind of where we begin today, I guess, right?
Yeah, and then the whole reason that Tony Stark was able to kind of say such things and take such a high position is, for a while after the events of Civil War, he was in the position that Osborn is in now, as of this event here. So, yeah. So I think that's as good as we need to get for setting this thing up. So I will get to this first paragraph here, and then you can react and we can go from there.
Perfect.
So this at the beginning of the summary here, it says that Osborn calls a meeting of the Cabal, which is this group of powerful and influential other villains and or just darker characters in the Marvel universe.
It's like Osborn's dark Illuminati that we covered kind of earlier. It's like his dark version of that. Basically,
right? Yeah, and so again, for reminders, this group consists of Doctor Doom, the Hood, Taskmaster, who is another serious assassin, kind of black ops kind of character.
Yeah.
Now working, I believe, for Osborn at this point, because almost everybody is.
The best fighter in the Marvel universe at this point.
Right. Yeah, and then of course Loki, because he's been behind the scenes influencing Osborn, probably in ways Osborn doesn't even realize at this point.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so it mentions here that about the whole position of Asgard, and so Osborn wants to take over Asgard and gain access to all the power and control it there.
Yeah.
But of course in this meeting there's a Doom decides he's had enough of working with Osborn and then ends up leaving, of course trying to kill everyone in the process, but it doesn't work because Osborn at this point also, I think it's probably important to mention, he has co-opted Tony Stark's technology into his own fold and his own infrastructure, and had a special suit created for himself similar to Iron Man, and in which he is basically can go out in the field and act as the leader of the Dark Avengers, which were his version of Avengers, who are all villains, and most of them are villains who have connections to other heroes that have also been made to look like those heroes.
Yeah.
Sort of in an effort to like get the people the public to trust them. So go ahead, sorry.
No, I just posted a picture in the chat. We've talked about them before, but like Wolverine is Daken, his like kind of son. Like they're kind of alternate versions or people with similar power sets to the original Avengers. So we have Black Suit Spider-Man, but it's actually Scorpion. We have, instead of having Thor, we have Ares, God of War. Norman Osborn is wearing that Iron Patriot suit, like the red, white, and blue Iron Man suit. And it's pretty. And Hawkeye is Bullseye, which is really cool. So yeah, just the all of the personas are being carried by villains, which is crazy, really weird. But they're the heroes of the Marvel universe at this point in the story. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, and kind of a side story here that we don't need to dig into a ton, but Norman Osborn even tries to get his son into the whole thing, Harry Osborn, by giving him this new persona for a while before it all falls apart as American Son, who was supposed to be like his version of Captain America.
Wow. Well, I didn't know
And
that.
yeah, and it doesn't go so well for anyone really.
Wow.
Yeah, because yeah, but I don't know all the details in that one. I read that story or something about that story years ago,
Yeah.
but I just remember hearing about that. So at this point, on the urging of Loki, Osborn asks the president for permission to take over Asgard, claiming they're a national security threat.
Yeah.
But of course, the president turns him down. Well, Osborn doesn't back down from that. He and Loki work together to create a trap for one of the Asgardians, Volstagg, and they basically manipulate him into fighting this other team of villains. That then leads to an explosion that kills everyone in the crowded football stadium.
Yeah.
And this is basically what Osborn needs at this point, saying, "Look at what this Asgardian did." Basically,
Exactly. So I just posted a picture of Volstagg in the chat. He's a funny character, and I guess he's a friend of Thor now that he's like on Midgard and like on in kind of around Oklahoma and stuff. He decides that he's heard Thor's stories throughout the years because he's Thor's friend. Thor's like stories of gallivanting around Midgard, having all his adventures. So he's out kind of just having the time of his life, kind of unsuspecting, and then he gets attacked by something called like the I wasn't reading. I was just listening to it while I was working, so I didn't get to see what it was spelled. But like the Unifo or something like that, and I guess it's like Osborn's group of people who try to replicate the experiment disaster that gave the Fantastic Four their powers. So it's like a group of villains with the Fantastic Four powers is the ones who are battling him, I guess. Volstagg. Is that what?
yeah, I
is that what
don't
happened?
remember a lot about
Yeah,
that one or
that's
those
pretty cool though.
people.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm
and
thinking they must not have been around in the comics for a super long time. Sorry, go ahead.
no, I guess not. Yeah, and conspiratorially, like I don't want to say too many like buzzwords that are get us kicked off YouTube or anything. But like this concept of uh, what Osborn and Loki are doing is like what a false flag is. This is like the Gulf of Tonkin. It's like to have somebody like pretend to attack kind of themselves, basically, to give them justification to go to war against a certain, like in this case, Osborn has control over everything, and he needs like still the permission from the government because he's not like fully in control like that, you know. So in order to do that, he needs for Asgard to be perceived as a villain. So having this kind of fake attack here, yeah, crazy.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So, I was just looking at the images there. That's amazing. But so yeah, so this happens. So this gives Osborn what he needs to just initiate an all-out siege of Asgard with military troops, along with the Dark Avengers and some members of the 50 State Initiative and their teams. So basically, just this huge army of people with powers and super advanced technology, and to go after Asgard. Now, at this point, even the people that are working for Osborn are starting to get worried.
Yeah.
And his assistant Victoria Hand suggests that maybe Osborn should look into some psychological therapy for his basically being so unstable and unpredictable. And of course, Osborn shoots that down right away.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, the president of the U.S. at this point is monitoring all this and realizes the same thing that Hand did.
Yeah.
And he orders Hand to bring Osborn to him. Of course, that doesn't go well. And so now, at the same time, the most powerful person that Osborn has working for him is Sentry, who is a superhero, who has some issues, psychological issues. Um, but
Like,
Osborn promises him that he can help take care of him and work through those things.
yeah, exactly. So
Yeah,
Sentry's kind of the in a lot of cases he's kind of depicted as just another version of like Superman, kind of just a Marvel version of Superman. But his like as far as his power set's concerned, but he's a very complex character, and he's kind of given this alter ego that we'll explore in the story called the Void, which is really cool, and which I hadn't heard of. I read she had like a solo title around like 2018 or 2019, which really explored the Void a lot, and it's really cool. It's really dark. The Void is, bar none, the most powerful thing in the Marvel universe at this point in the continuity. It's the only thing that wasn't affected by Wanda doing the No More Mutants thing. Like it was outside of that. Wanda was not powerful enough to affect the Void at all. And the Void is it's like this cosmic force, kind of like a Phoenix Force to an extent, depending on how it's being depicted. But the way we see it normally being drawn is just like a evil, crazy version of Sentry, who again is like unbelievably powerful, and we'll see how that manifests itself throughout the story. But it's great.
yeah. So in order to manipulate him more, Osborn has Bullseye acting as Hawkeye, kill the Sentry's wife, and then claims to Sentry that she actually committed suicide.
Wow.
And so just to kind of mess with him more and get him more under his control, under Osborn's control.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, Loki is in Asgard doing his usual thing, basically attacking and killing key characters, people in that world that that would make it harder to take over if they were still there, including neutralizing Heimdall, which is the guardian of the city, who is pretty powerful. Almost, I'm not sure. I don't think he's quite as powerful as Thor, but he's still up there in the power levels.
Yeah, and he's the one who could see everything that's happening at all times, like all at once.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, which is very cool.
So that would be important to do that, because otherwise there'd be no element of surprise, really.
Yeah, and I'm not sure where it happens in the story, but Heimdall, I'm not sure this is why he does it, but Heimdall's the one that is going around kind of telling these heroes, or these like darker heroes, the ones who are working for Osborn, being like, "Are you sure that you're doing the right thing right now? Are you sure that Osborn hasn't tricked you? Because I've seen everything, and I'm telling you right now that it's not what you think it is. Osborn's not doing what you think it is." And that kind of, I don't want to spoil anything that's coming in a minute, but that's what leads some of these heroes to kind of switch sides on Osborn.
Yeah, and that's an important thing too, because there are some of the, especially the main Dark Avengers team, that are following willingly.
Yeah.
But there are many others that have been tricked into this whole thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So the event begins really with Sentry attacking Asgard, followed by Osborn in his Iron Patriot armor. Iron Patriot, again, is supposed to be this idea of combining Captain America and Iron Man, except that this is better because it's Osborn.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, Thor, who has been MIA in a lot of the comics for a while, is finally back in the comics at this point. I don't know the details there. That's kind of just one story among all the many threads to this. Yeah. But these characters, they do come and go and have times where they're not around, and then they get brought back in. And so he shows up in the middle of this battle. And but he doesn't do so well against Sentry. And
he's getting annihilated by Sentry. I guess that was like throughout seemingly like the whole 5-issue or 5-issue story basically is just Thor is like, Thor's also considered to be kind of a Superman character as when it comes to like kind of the casual fan. If you go online, all you see is like Thor versus Superman fan battles or whatever. So having Sentry here, who's also supposed to be like in your head on par with Thor, is just wetting the floor with them. It is absolutely taking him to school, and Thor doesn't have a chance really. And it's kind of a shocking thing. I wasn't expecting it when I was hearing about it. And I think it's supposed to be like kind of scary for everybody. Like this is Asgard's #1 champion, and he's getting toyed with as if he's like a doesn't even have powers. Basically, it's crazy.
Right. So, meanwhile, of course, all the real heroes, the main heroes, have been fighting against this whole regime of Osborn, but for the longest time they couldn't do anything because he was in control of the media and the law enforcement and everything. But eventually, once this whole thing starts, Captain America, Steve Rogers, finally does have the reason and the motive he needs to activate a group of actual Avengers in Brooklyn, New York.
Yep.
To basically, they all head to Asgard to help Thor out, which is ironic because none of them are nearly as powerful as he is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was happening on TV too. That's why, like, I think one of the issues, issue 1 or 2, whatever, ends with this being televised because it's happening. Like Asgard is above Oklahoma, so it's happening in America. So it's being televised on TV. So you see you see Steve Rogers looking at it on TV and then being like, okay, this is it. That's like enough of this already. Like Thor needs our help, and then he calls together. Is it the Secret Avengers or the New Avengers? Because at this point, there's like 4 different Avengers teams happening right now.
I think that the time that New Avengers team was sort of also the Secret Avengers. If I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
But you are right in this. As throughout this whole thing, once it starts, Osborn does get just one news anchor or talk show host to cover this whole thing, and of course, in the way that Osborn wants it to be covered.
Yeah, exactly. Propaganda. Yeah.
Yeah, but of course, there are other people that are in the media that have been noticing all this strange activity, and so here's a little Daredevil tie-in here.
Yeah.
Ben Urich, who is a editor of the Frontline, who's a newspaper in New York, heads to Oklahoma, to where this is happening, to check this out.
Yeah.
And they actually meet Volstagg along the way, and who joins them. And
Urich he's fearless. He's like epitome of he's kind of like the Lois Lane of the Marvel universe. He's like the reporter. He's like he goes up against the Kingpin with no fear of any repercussions. I'm not surprised he's gonna go right to the thick of it over in Asgard. Like he's a boss. Urich.
Yeah. Yep. Definitely. And he does not have any powers that I'm aware of.
No powers. No.
Yeah. So it's not easy, but so yeah, the speaking of different people being tricked by Osborn, his kind of replacement version of Thor, who is actually the Olympian god of war Ares, kind of figures out what's going on, and tries to go after Osborn for tricking him.
Yep.
And the Sentry steps in and kills the god of war.
Crazy. Yeah. So Ares is one of the characters who was who Heimdall came to and was like, "Are you sure you're doing the right thing? I'm watching everything that's going on, and Osborn has you tricked. I know you're a person of honor." He's very similar to Thor. Like and his power set. I mean, Thor, we know, is arguably he's like the strongest Avenger. He's arguably one of the strongest people in the universe, but he's just a god of thunder. Like Ares is the god of war. He's on par with Thor, if not even a little bit stronger, And then I don't want this picture's online. I didn't want to get it for the chat because it's a little bit too graphic, but Sentry literally rips him in two, tears him literally in two to kill him, like rips him in half. And it's just like, wow, crazy.
Yeah, the comics definitely are not for kids, despite what you might have heard. They are not for kids, and this isn't even. This is just action kind of comics. This is not, supposed to be. It's not like what you would
Gory.
call like, I don't know, pornography or what. It's not nothing like negative in that way.
Yeah.
It's just like think of your modern day like rated R kind of movie, I guess, or whatever.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's not too bad. I just didn't want to post like a
Right.
too much
Yeah.
too much like blood. I mean, it's still cartoony and comic-y, and
Right.
it's not scary, but it was just
But just the idea.
intense. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see here. Um, the there's this other villain from I believe he's actually from Asgard. He finds and uses this enchanted spear of Odin, who is the ruler of
Yeah.
Asgard.
Thor's dad.
And he just goes into the fray as well and starts attacking everyone and causing terrible damage to a lot of the heroes.
Oh wow.
So the let me see here. The
It says here it says here he was going after the U.S. agent, who I didn't realize he was even in this event. But he's like he's another version of Cap. He gets like the superhero, the super soldier serum at one point when Cap is not. I guess because Cap's not really in the thick of it until he watches this on TV and decides to hop in. But I guess this is the era of U.S. agent. It's really I know you don't watch the cinematic universe, but it's really they're like leading up to this very much so. It's like they're about to introduce the Thunderbolts, and we just got U.S. Agent in Falcon and the Winter Soldier and stuff. It's crazy the parallels. And then it also says that Night Thrasher was in here, and I have a few Night Thrasher comics, and he's a deep cut character. I didn't realize he was in the mix here. Wow.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. They do. I think they like to do that. They like to put in these characters that normally don't get a ton of use in the comics, and then, but so at this point, the president wants Osborn arrested and starts sending in military to do that. And of course, Captain America, Steve Rogers, is already kind of ahead of the game here.
Yeah.
He manages to knock Osborn down, but before Osborn is taken out completely or neutralized completely, he gives Sentry one last order. Which is to so basically to power up and tear Asgard apart.
Yeah, he screams, "Take it all down!" Like he knows he's about to get arrested, so he's just like, "No, yeah. I mean, you're all going down with me." So he screams to Sentry, "This, bring it down! Take it all down! Everything down!" And Sentry literally crashes Asgard to back to Earth. Like,
yeah,
wild.
So that you're basically the destruction of a city that is like the last part of a world.
Exactly.
And it's just crashed into another world.
Exactly.
So, and of course, then Osborn is taken down.
Yep.
And now Tony Stark has been in the background of all this as well, and he regains access to his technology, and has the part I think what takes Osborn out is Stark orders the armor that Osborn is wearing to explode.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that would hurt a bit. And it kind of reveals that Osborn has his face painted to look like the Green Goblin who he was years ago.
Yeah, which kind of just reminds everyone. Again, this is being played on TV, so it's kind of that was like that busted scenario where the whole world realizes, oh yeah, this is the Green Goblin. We forgot. Like things have gotten so crazy over the last few years that for some reason we have accepted all these villains. We've accepted Norman Osborn as the leader of all of our superheroes here, but now this is like a reminder that he's the bad guy. The stat quo is about to be normal in a minute.
Right. So at this point, the Void basically breaks out of Sentry.
Jeez.
And so Loki realizes that everything is going to be destroyed.
Yep.
Everything. And so he goes to Odin, who is his adopted father, and begs Odin for the use of these mystical Norn stones to give the heroes power boost to stop the void.
Yeah, this was crazy. I never heard of the North Stones before this, um, and I haven't really looked at it, got that deep into it. But apparently, they're not as powerful as the Infinity Stones or whatever, and it's not clear cut. Like, you don't always get the same power every time you use the stones, or every person isn't given the same power. But it kind of like amplifies specifically to the wearer, and like basing it on whatever the wearer kind of, or the user kind of needs for this circumstance. So it's like very fluid, and it's just kind of yeah, it's just kind of this MacGuffin thing in the story. Pretty cool.
Yeah. So this does allow all the heroes there to kind of start taking the battle back to the void.
Yeah.
But and they make it retreat back into Sentry, who begs the heroes at that point to kill him, to stop that from ever happening again.
Yeah.
Stop the void from ever, hurting anyone again. And
yeah, like right before that, so real quick, something for a little like esoterica kind of like, so Loki's the trickster, and the trickster is all around the world and in every different mythology and stuff. And it's not, I know, like when we have all the shows and stuff, a lot of times we talk about the trickster or trickster entities as kind of being mischievous and negative in a lot of circumstances, but it's not always the case. And like a good example of that is like the coyote in North American, like the Native American mythologies and stuff. And when times are good, the coyote, the trickster, is mischievous and bad, and it's trying to buck the status quo, whatever the status quo is. So if status quo is good, then the trickster is negative. But if the status quo is bad, if you have Norman Osborn and a bunch of villains running the show, and things get too bad, like if Sentry is getting too powerful, and the odds for the good guys gets too out of whack, then the trickster then becomes a good guy, and the trickster then starts to be mischievous against the status quo, which is negative. So Loki has this kind of hero turn, or not hero turn, but just kind of switch back to aligning with the side of the good, and gives these North Stones. So then Void the Void senses this like power shift, and he's like, oh, there's only one thing that could like change this, and it's mischief. So he kind of sniffs out that Loki's involved, and he kills Loki. And
that's right.
I guess it's crazy, and I guess it's treated. I mean, we talk about all the time how characters are killed and brought back all the time, but I guess at this point it's treated very seriously, and it's like, for a while this was the death of Loki, and when he comes back in the comics, it's a different Loki. It's not this version of Loki that we've had for the last few years. It's a kind of a new rebirth, new iteration of him. But he kind of has his brotherly moment, like as he's about to be killed, and like looks at Thor and says, "I'm sorry," kind of, which, as you would imagine, really upsets Thor. So when Sentry's saying "kill me," Thor's saying, "No, you're going to get arrested. You're going to pay for what you did to my brother," and death would be too easy for you right now.
Yeah, that's a good. I'd seen that. I just hadn't gotten to that. The fact that Loki was, and that is, I think that makes sense in a way, because if Loki hadn't changed, if he hadn't turned, then really he would have been destroyed anyway.
Yeah, definitely.
There would be no trickster. There would be no. He'd have no purpose anymore. He'd be gone.
Exactly.
And there'd never be a chance for him to come back, because everything would be done.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to play in that, definitely.
Yeah.
So Thor does end up doing what Sentry asks him to do.
Yeah.
And that's basically how the event, the major part of the event, ends. And there is one part that I thought was hilarious in a way, because Norman Osborn kind of comes back to consciousness for a little bit, and he's all like thanking the heroes for like saving everyone. And then Spider-Man, Peter Parker, just shows up and just punches him. He's like, just shut up. Like, I don't want to hear it. After all that you've done here, because that Green Goblin was mainly just a villain that Parker faced.
Yeah.
And it was never easy, but this whole thing with Osborn in charge for so long, just made, of all the characters, possibly Peter Parker's life the worst
Oh yeah, for sure,
out
for
of all
sure.
this.
And Norman Osborn is a great character. Like he doesn't exist in the MCU yet. Like he's there hopefully because of the weird Sony Marvel rights and everything. But he's kind of Marvel's fusion of like a Lex Luthor meets the Joker. He has like the Lex Luthor's kind of where he's like a evil Tony Stark because he has Oscorp and everything. He has kind of the Tony Stark, Lex Luthor, power wielding and dealing type thing. But he also is the Green Goblin and has this. He's also this chaotic, crazy type villain, similar to Batman has the Joker, all fused into one. So he's a really dynamic character. And now this is him kind of stepping into the main stage of the MC or of the Marvel universe and like touching everything. You know, it's pretty cool. I wish they did it in the live action. It'd be fun to watch.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. He's entertaining at the very least. That character.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, from here, it's just a matter of cleaning up. A lot of the characters that were in the Cabal ended up being either captured or escaping. And Rogers is the next one to be appointed the leader of SHIELD and of the whole peacekeeping forces of the U.S. and the military and everything. And so now he's in charge. And I have to say, out of all the people, he's probably the best one for it overall.
Yeah. He's a good nominee. So they were like, the president was like, we've seen how Fury runs the show. We saw how Tony runs the show. We saw how Norman Osborn runs the show. And honestly, none of that was very good. And probably the Norman Osborn was probably the worst of that. But you don't want to be Cap right now. But the way you can help your country and help the world is to take over Shield. And yeah, I mean, Cap's the one hero that nobody really questions his morality. Like all the heroes really, he's not the strongest, he's not the most powerful. Like he just has the super soldier serum, but he's like his opinion is the one that every hero respects probably more than anyone. So nobody has and he's usually justified. Like he kind of had the what ended up in hindsight what ended up being the better side of Civil War, which was like 2 events before this. So that's kind of how we pitched it to him. Like you were right in Civil War. You should have been in charge the whole time. We're sorry, but help us please, kind of deal.
Yeah. Yep. Also, just a quick callback to the U.S. agent. Because of all this, there are a lot of characters, villains that were working for Osborn that are captured.
Yeah.
And this actually leads to the U.S. agent being made the warden of this maximum security super villain prison, the Raft. He's placed in charge of all that.
That should end well.
Yeah, that'll be fine.
Yeah, that's no problem there. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Yep. So, but yeah, it's a really amazing event. Go ahead.
I think every kind of villain, all the ones that were the Dark Avengers, are kind of all accounted for. They've all been either arrested or given these new rules, kind of turned back to the good side. But except for is it Dakin or Dakin? I've only read it. I've never heard it out loud.
Yeah, I've never heard it out loud either.
Yeah.
I don't think I've heard it out loud either. I don't know.
But
it doesn't surprise me that he escapes.
Yeah, he was doing some other. I forget what it was. But he was doing some other mission in one of the tie-in issues, I guess. And so he has his own ongoing title at this point, like Dark Wolverine at this point. Right. So he's a pretty big character right now in the Marvel universe. He's a cool character. He's like a young Wolverine who, if Wolverine didn't want to, like, Wolverine kind of doesn't like the attention. He doesn't call himself a hero. He doesn't want to like be in the spotlight, where Dakin's kind of like a celebrity almost at some points, which is kind of fun. But yeah, it's just wild story. Fun, James, really cool stuff.
Yeah, no, it definitely was fun to I mean, it was an amazing story to read and then cover this one as well. So yeah, it's the turning of the whole situation from Osborn being in control, and you think everything's gonna basically be okay, but of course it's comic books, so it never lasts for too long.
Exactly, yeah. And I guess right now in the comics, it's called like the new birth of the new heroic age or something like that. So it's a monumental time for the actual continuity of the comics, and which then leads us into the next event, which gonna be do you want to spoil it for everybody, or do you want to keep it a secret for now, or have we?
Spoil it. And what's funny? I forgot to mention this. You'll probably notice that there's one group of characters that we didn't really mention at all, and that is the X-Men.
Oh yeah.
And part of that is because they're still down to minimal numbers.
Yeah.
Because of the events of House of M. Yeah.
Yeah, like less than 100, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Jeez,
so I mean, there are a few of them that have participated in events, but they're not a major force in a lot of the events for a while until things leading up to Avengers versus X-Men, which is gonna be epic. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pumped. Yeah.
Yeah.
Stay tuned for that, everybody. That'll be a fun one. It's kind of the culmination of like everything we talked about so far. All the different events kind of lead to this one giant, massive, the two biggest like forces. The two biggest power dynamics. The whole universe. The mutant versus the enhanced. Very cool.
And the social, the dismissed, the hated and feared versus the heroes.
Yes, exactly. In a lot of ways. Exactly.
And and I just want to tell everybody, if you have read comics, you may be thinking that this is going to follow the usual storyline where it's team versus team until they realize there's this one villain that's manipulating all of them, and then they face that villain. No, that's not how this goes.
Not this time.
Yeah. So, and there's just
I'm excited.
It builds on so many of the relationships between the characters. It's just such a good event.
It's years in the making for sure.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, James. That was a blast. I'll mute up and let you say goodbye. But thanks for listening, everybody. That was really fun, James. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you as well. Yeah, and that was fun. I'm biased on this Avengers versus X-Men event because it's my favorite one out of all the ones I've read. So I'm looking forward to that. And we'll announce that when once we have that scheduled. So, but yeah, so tomorrow night will be more paranormal news, and that will close out the week. Thank you all for listening, and thanks again to Derek for joining me and helping me out with this. And I will talk to you all tomorrow night on the next episode of Salcedo Paranormal. Take care, everyone.